So your agent just called. There's an email in your inbox. You've got a self-tape. Do you know what to do next? Hey guys, and welcome back to another installment of Talent Talkback, where we try and demystify the world of film and television to hopefully give everybody a bit of a better understanding. Today we are talking about self-tapes, and if you're not familiar with the term, well then you're in the right place. So a self-tape is what happens when you get a casting brief out from a casting director that may not be in your city or may be seeing a lot of other people but still needs to see more. So a self-tape will often happen when there are big periods going on with film and television. So right now we're sort of moving through the depths of pilot season in the US. So there's briefs coming out of LA, out of New York, Vancouver, Atlanta, any of the big filming locations for new TV shows going into production. So what will often happen is a casting director will go through and have his brief in front of him and go through the list of submissions that your agent has put you forward for. And if you're one of those people that they want to see from your show reel, they'll get in contact with your agent and they'll go, you want to see tape, you've got 24 hours, 72 hours, sometimes it's a couple of hours turnaround to actually be able to get that tape back into them. Now this can seem really scary, but if you've been doing your work, the basics of actually getting a script down and getting it back are simple. The problem is that you're not going to the casting agent's rooms. You've got to do it all yourself. So where do you start? Well, lucky for us nowadays, you don't have to go out and buy a really expensive camera. I mean, you can if you want to. There's some amazing DSLRs out there that you can pick up on, new and on the second-hand market for a pretty reasonable price. I generally just do it off my phone. And that's the beauty about our mobile devices these days, is that they've got really good sound already pre-built into them and they've got fantastic cameras. So if you've got a phone that's from the last 2 or 3 years, you're going to be fine to actually do that on your phone. Now, there are occasions where casting directors will ask you to do it with high production value. If they're doing that, your phone's not going to cut it, but they are getting less and less common as time goes on and as our mobile technology moves forward. So you've kind of got to think of it as a little mini film production. So you've got to think about lighting, you've got to think about sound, and you've got to think about location. Now, I'm going to start with location first because this is imperative, like really imperative. Whatever it says in the script, if it's an outside or it's a kitchen or whatever it is, forget it. Forget the location that it's set in. You want a very bland background, something that you can be shown up against. As you can see here, I've got a nice blue soft lit background behind me, which frames me really well. Again, clothing's a good, an important choice with the way things go on, but I'll come to that later. So you want a nice plain background that's going to show you and show your eyes, your facial expressions, because that's what they're looking for. I don't want a full long shot. They can do all that when you're on set. They want to see what you look like up close and whether you actually know how to work a camera. Other thing you've got to think about is lighting. Now, the other thing that I'll get onto later is when you're on holidays and when you're away from your setups and things like that, how you can problem solve. But lighting is a very important one. And basically, nowadays you can pick up lights for a pretty cheap and cost effective, okay? So I picked up these off eBay probably 12 months ago. And the beauty about these things is I got 2 of those for $50. And they do the job. They're LEDs, they soft light, they came with different interchangeable things so you can work with different lighting settings. And they're perfect for when you're shooting at home and you've got your setup ready to go. I'm using one on the shoot today. The other thing that I want you to think about is tripods as well, to actually hold up your camera and whatever you're shooting on. If you're shooting on your phone, you can use a selfie stick with a basic tripod that you can get from most cheap stores, Kmart, Target, those kind of things, for like $10 or less. So think about that. Don't go all out and buy a $130 or more tripod. This can be cost effective, and think about that, Because if you're not landing a lot of roles, you're not getting a lot out of it, do you really want to be going out and spending a lot of money on something that's probably not going to get a lot of use like you'd expect it to? If you start shooting things in the long run, sure, go and do that. But I mean, these are all steps down the line. So sound is a very important one. And I don't mean the sound quality so much as ambient sound. So if you live close to a busy road, if you've got animals, if you've got children, anything that's going to bring in third-party noise and kind of ruin the environment that you're setting up and the scene that you're setting to the casting director, they're going to pick up on that right away. So remember that when you're recording things, to have a nice quiet room, even if you just lock yourself in a room somewhere away from everybody else, make sure the windows are closed, make sure the curtains are closed, because curtains are actually great sound reducers, if you hadn't already worked that out already. So think about ways that you can ensure that you're going to be nice and clearly heard, there's not going to be any background noise, there's not going to be any distractions. So once you've got all those elements in check, what's next? Well, big thing, think about what you're shooting in front of. If you're shooting in front of a white background, you've got to be looking for shadows and things like that. So make sure that you're standing far enough away from the wall that you don't throw a nice big fat shadow on the wall. I'm a bit lucky with this setup here, that with what I'm using here, this is just a blanket from Kmart that I picked up. I think it cost me $15. And it not only doubles as keeping me warm in the winter, it gives me this nice soft backlighting that actually takes up some of the shadows that I'm actually doing, so you don't notice them as much. Good tip. So think about what you're wearing as well. Think about stuff that shows off your color palette. I'm a bit lucky, I'm dark haired, blue eyes, pale skin, so a blue background like this will set me off. A grey background as well would set me off. Redheads, blue sets you off perfectly, and if you're olive coloured, you can kind of get away with whatever you want. If you're using like fake tan and things like that, you're trying to blend in to look a bit more summery, those kind of things. Blues can probably almost overdo it. Greys are better. Realistically, stay away from white and black backgrounds. This may just be a personal choice, but they look way too harsh on camera, and it will also take out a very large piece of your wardrobe when you're actually doing them. You think about it, most of us have got a lot of black and white in our wardrobes, and so it would actually stop you from wearing those outfits when you actually want to film, and that can actually be something important. Also, when you're thinking about what you're doing with these tapes, think about what the person would wear. Go basic costuming. So if you're playing a police officer, maybe put on a business shirt. If you're, same with a lawyer, maybe a suit jacket. But think basics. Don't go too over the top. There's no need to, if you're playing a scientist, to go out and get a lab coat and a stethoscope and all that. Like, don't go too over the top, because they're all distractions. Think about what you would be taking into that casting director if it was in the city that you were in. You'd be taking whatever you could have in your pocket. So if there's a phone in the scene, that's great, have your phone. Your wallet, have your wallet. But when you start talking about knives and bats and stuff that you wouldn't normally carry on yourself on a day-to-day basis, lose it. Don't do it. It's going to end up being a distraction, and more often than not, you're actually going to end up paying more attention to it than you should be. And it's a trap that the casting director will actually want to see if you can pick up on. So the other important thing when you're doing a self-tape is having a reader. And some of you may have already picked up on this already because you've already done self-tapes or you're a little bit more switched on. But if you're doing a self-tape, normally it's a script with 2 people, minimum. And so you've got to think about having somebody that you can work with on the other side of the camera, that can operate your camera and is going to help you to actually give the best performance that you can. So it helps to have a group of people, here we are again, on standby that you can give a message to, or they can message you as well, to help out with these things. Because again, it's a community thing. We don't get ahead in this industry without the help of others. So remember that you need other people. I mean, there are apps and things around whereby that if you're at a pinch, think about what you can actually use to record the lines and have them read it back in a weird voice or things like that. But again, you're going to have a preset rhythm to that as well, and it may not flow as nicely as it needs to, and it may lack something. So just think about that. So I touched on earlier about locations, and when you're on holidays or you're away from your setup and things like that, what do? You get the call, you've got to get this self-tape in. A lot of places now, depending on where you're on holidays, you should actually be able to find a place that you can actually do that. Especially if you're in the US, you'll be able to do it. There's a few places through London and Europe as well. And there are companies here in Australia, my production company is one of them, that does self-tapes to allow these things to get done on short notice and at a high quality. But if you don't, it always pays to have a few things with you. And more often than not, if you're on holidays, you've already got a tripod, a selfie stick, and your phone with you anyway to be recording everything that you're doing. And if you don't, maybe you start thinking about taking it, because more often than not that you can use just that simple setup, find a table, find a blank wall that's got a light that's set up under it so you can get some nice lighting, or even let a little bit of lighting in your accommodation. Boom, there's your studio. There's where you can set up and you can go and do that self-tape and get it off and land that roll. So there's these little things whereby, just because you're on holiday doesn't mean that you can't do it. There's a whole stack of other videos on people showing off their self-test kit setups on YouTube. I would tell you to go and do the same thing. I'm going to take a photo of this setup after I've finished filming this video to show you exactly what my setup, and it's not going to be classy. It's going to be simple and it's going to be easy, and that's all it needs to be when you're doing these self-tapes. You're not looking at studio production value, you're looking to prove what you can do. Remember that. Don't worry about actions and movements. I mean, a little bit. So if you come into a scene and you leave a scene, think about that, because that gives the casting director an understanding that you can follow a little bit of direction on the scene. But if you don't come in, remember, you can get creative with your editing as well. So, and a lot of phones have editing software on there ready to go. Apple's iMovie is amazing, and Samsung has now got a myriad of editing programs that are available. Same with Android platform phones. You can do it all on your phone now. You don't need a big editing suite. You don't need to have your laptop with you. It's all there ready to go. But guys, that's it all from me today on self-tests. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd even love to see what your setups are for self-tests for those guys that are doing it. So please comment down below. Give us a like, subscribe, stay tuned. We've got more to come. But until next time, guys, have fun and good luck with those self-tests.